All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ETS Travel Podcast. Hope you're having a blessed day, whatever day you might be listening to this here. And thank you for listening to the ETS Travel Podcast, where we talk about faith-focused travel, meaningful experiences, and practical advice to help you travel with confidence. I'm John, and today we're tackling something every traveler experienced at some point: travel headaches. They happen often, whether it's delayed flights, lost luggage, jet lag, confusing airports, or trying to cram too many things into one itinerary. Travel can sometimes feel stressful before the even trip really begins. So the good news is that many of the biggest travel frustrations can actually be avoided, prevented, or at least minimized with better preparation and the right expectations. So today, Bethany is joining us, as always, and we're going to walk through some of the most common travel problems that we see travelers face and give practical advice for avoiding them. So, Bethany, thanks again for being here with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy doing the podcast with you, John, and I'm excited about this conversation. So, schools are letting out. I know my kiddo gets out next week, super early here in Florida.
Yep.
But that means vacation time is coming, so we're going to be looking at travel from a vacation standpoint. But as always, look at it through a group standpoint as well. So, of course, travel is incredibly rewarding, but preparation absolutely matters. So the better you prepare your clients, the better experience they're going to have. And then, the more chance they're going to want to come back and book with you again. And most travel problems are really manageable if they're approached with the right mindset. Just in personal travel, stuff happens, and you got to look at it like, oh, okay, how am I going to solve this problem? Not just like, oh no, the world is ending, there's a problem. But getting your clients ready with the right mindset of like, if there's a problem, there's a solution, and really kind of drilling that into them, get them in that right mindset. So the goal today is to help you and help travelers feel more comfortable and less anxious.
Absolutely. So I think for a lot of people, the stress starts before they even get to the destination. Airports can feel overwhelming, especially some of even our airports here in the U.S. A lot of them are, I can think of some to name a few that are just, pain to deal with. But what would you say are some of the biggest airport-related headaches travelers would experience?
Sure. So I've got 5 to share with you guys today. And the first one is long security lines and crowded terminals. There's nothing more stressful than you're an hour before your flight and you're still stuck in the TSA line. So the number one thing you can do to avoid this stressing you out is get to the airport 3 hours before your flight. If you're doing an international flight, that's going to give you time to check in your bags. And the more time your bags, or, the earlier your bags are checked in at the airport, the more time they have to get to your plane and get to the right place. So, getting there early, check in your bags, and then get in the TSA line like 2 hours before your flight. That way you've got plenty of time to get through it, even if there's a crazy government shutdown again and they're limiting how many TSA agents are actually coming into work, because they're not getting paid and things like that. As we've experienced this year, it can be crazy. So give yourself the maximum amount of time. It stinks if you've got a 7 a.m. flight. So you got to get to the airport then at 4 a.m. So that means getting up at at least 3, maybe to drive there and those kind of things. It's not ideal. Everybody would rather have that extra hour of sleep, but it can make all the difference when you've got long security lines and trying to navigate, especially if you don't fly often and you're not familiar with the terminals and how to navigate the, airport. The other thing that people want to get to their destinations as quickly as possible. So item number 2, tight flight connections. It creates so much anxiety. stuff happens all the time. Things that are outside of the airline or the airport's control, weather can happen. So giving yourself longer flight connection times, it just helps leave less room for, craziness to happen. If you only have 40 minutes between your flights when it's supposed to land and you're getting off the plane and going and walking over, especially say you have to change terminals or something, it's so anxiety inducing. It's terrible. We really try our hardest when we're booking the group airfare to look at the airports where they have the connection and keep it as close to 2 hours time as possible, because that just gives wiggle room if there is a little weather delay, especially we're here in Florida. So if a storm rolls through and there's lightning, they don't allow any planes to land or take off or even taxi away from the gate. So, that goes on for 30 minutes. All of a sudden your flight's leaving 30 minutes later and you only had a 40-minute connection at your next airport. That becomes a problem and no one can control the weather. So, helping your clients say, okay, a 3-hour layover in JFK is not awesome. It's a lot of wasted time that you could have at your destination. But the other option is 40 minutes. Let's go with the safer choice. And it's going to make it a lot less anxiety possible for that. And number 3 that I kind of mentioned, gate changes and delays happen constantly. So prepping your clients or even yourself that something might happen. And I'm just going to roll with it and we'll figure out a solution. My flight's been delayed 2 hours. I'm going to go to the counter and talk to them about getting it rebooked because I know I'm going to miss my connection. If you just take a deep breath and say, okay, stuff happens, I'm going to go get it solved, and help your clients to have that mindset if they're calling you panicked and just calmly tell them hey, it's a problem, but we're going to find you a solution. Here's what you need to go do. And, just don't panic with them. It's going to be great at reducing their anxiety and their stress level for sure. Number 4, travelers underestimate how exhausting travel days can be. I have so many people that come to us and want a customized itinerary and they're trying to pack every day, even the arrival day. So say day 1, is to depart the US and day 2, they're supposed to arrive in the morning. So they're like, we're arriving in the morning. Let's go ahead and do touring on arrival day. You can, but say you didn't sleep on that 8-hour flight to Europe and you get there and you're just kind of tired and, it's 8 a.m. You're getting through customs at the airport and picking up your bag and passport control and all that kind of stuff. So you're getting to the bus at, 10:30 a.m. maybe. And you're supposed to go and spend the next 6 hours touring.
Oh yeah, it's rough.
Just talking about it, I feel emotionally exhausted and it can be physically exhausting. So if you do want to, or have a client that wants to go as soon as they get there, maybe talk them into scaling it back a little bit and say, okay, we can't check into the hotel till 3. So let's we'll go somewhere where people can go wander around, grab some lunch, maybe do a little shopping, and we'll see a historic church or one historic site, and then get them to the hotel as close to check-in time as possible. That way they can get in a room and they can kind of relax a little bit before dinner. And it's going to be a better day than if you're trying to cram 6 hours on that arrival day, because you just never know. Sometimes you can sleep on a plane great, sometimes you can't. And if you're tired and cranky, that first day is just going to be miserable and forgettable and not a great way to start your trip for sure.
For sure.
Number 5, international airports can feel intimidating, especially if you don't travel much, you're unfamiliar with the process, they're making announcements in another language, and you're trying to look and find the English signs or, the boards with the flights, arrivals, and that kind of stuff in English. It's stressful. So as much as you can prepare your clients and say, hey, look, this is going to be different. You're not flying through Dallas, Fort Worth, where, there's announcements everywhere in English and the signs, and you're used to flying out of this airport all the time. So you kind of know the terminals. If it's their first time, especially internationally, it's It's very, very different. They may have different security procedures. Like if you're going through the Frankfurt airport, you might go through security passport checks 2 or 3 times as you're changing between terminals. So that's another airport, just personal tidbit. Always make sure your clients have like a 3-hour layover because it's a huge airport, and they will get stopped like 2 or 3 times by different passport controls. You go to the Istanbul airport, and you want to get to your gate usually at least like 45 minutes to an hour before, because they do a security check at the gate. And then once you go through that security check, you can't leave. So, doing some research, reading airport reviews, and advising your clients on what to expect, because every international airport's a little different. That's going to help them feel like they know what's going on and what to expect. And that's going to take a lot of the anxiety out of the travel experience, because airports, we all know, are definitely anxiety inducing at the best of times.
For sure. And I like what you touched on about arriving early. I'm of the mindset I like to just be where I am early and know I'm there, because that in itself eliminates stress for me. And especially like a long layover. If it's a long layover, but I'm where I know I need to be, I have time to get there, and all I have to do is just, board my flight. For me, it's a good trade-off of waiting, a few hours.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people. If I have a 7 a.m. flight, I'm going to get there as close to 4 a.m. as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't want my bag getting lost, and I don't mind, having to wait around at the gate. I can get a coffee, I can get, breakfast and just hang out and read a book. I'm perfectly happy. I'd rather sit around an airport than miss my flight.
For sure. And one thing I notice is people trying to schedule everything incredibly tight. They arrive to an airport late, and then they expect every segment of their flight to be perfectly timed. We see that happen all the time.
Yeah, or they're surprised when their bag doesn't make it, and it's like, well, you checked in 45 minutes before your flight. You weren't giving them a whole lot of time, to get your bag to the plane.
Yep. So, yeah, a couple things that, could be done to avoid that is, building margin into travel days is one of the best things travelers can do, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't pack every minute. You don't need 10 hours of touring every day. 4 to 6 hours of touring in Europe and giving them, 2 hours in the middle of the day, in the middle of touring, to have lunch at some random cafe or restaurant and shop and that kind of stuff. And then getting back to the hotel, 4 or 5 in the afternoon, or letting them stay out and do stuff on their own, in the late afternoon, evening. It's going to be a much more positive experience. They're going to experience a lot more of the culture. Whereas if it's just 10 hours of go, because we're going to see 12 sites today, it's not really ideal. So, it always depends on your client, especially if you're booking them, like it's a family vacation and you're booking an individual tour through, Tours by Local or something. Keep it to a minimum, 4 to 6 hours. They get the general overview, or they get a very specific site visit on that day, and then let them have the rest of the time to explore on their own. Me personally, having time on my own to wander a city, I find so many amazing things that get left off of tours, like little details, or I find a random, pub or cafe or something, and I have a great meal, and it's like, oh, this is so cool, but, this isn't in the TripAdvisor top 20 restaurants. We wouldn't have necessarily included it in a tour if we were including lunch, but, I'm so happy I just had that time to explore and find a jewel like that. And, recommending arriving earlier than travelers think they need to.
Right.
I will keep pounding that throughout this episode. It's so much better to be early and have to sit around than to be stressed out and running. And avoid the mindset of perfect timing when flying or when touring, because stuff happens with flying, weather delays, mechanical delays, the flight that's coming in that's supposed to go back out with you came in 30 minutes late, and now they have to do a crew change because the crew's timed out. Stuff just happens.
Yep.
And so, there is no perfect timing. They've got to be in a flexible mindset. Even with touring, traffic happens. And so, packing too many sites and too many times where you specifically have to be somewhere at a certain time and not allowing enough time in between sites to account for things like traffic, it's just give yourself time, be flexible, and it's going to be a much, much better experience. And definitely always encourage your clients to download the airline apps. I know not everybody's a big technology person. You may have older travelers and that kind of stuff. But if they download the app and you help them get their flights in there and it's giving them live updates, so they're not having to just wait for the airport announcements or go keep checking the boards, that's going to help them feel like they know what's going on, and it's going to prepare them better if there is a gate change or something like that, or when boarding's going to start and that kind of stuff. I think I'm just going deaf personally, but when I'm in an airport and they're announcing boarding, like I can't understand what they're saying, or I can't hear it. It's not great maintained speaker systems, I guess, in airports. So, being able to just check my phone and it says, oh, my group is now boarding. Right. That's really nice, because if you are harder of hearing, or if it's just a terrible speaker system at the airport, you'll know what's going on. And then be comfortable and have organized travel documents. I know this has been a big kind of online controversy I earlier this year and stuff. Tampa Airport joked that they were going to ban people from wearing pajamas in the airport and on flights. You can be comfortable without looking like I just rolled out of bed. Find a happy medium, guys. But definitely comfortable clothing. Don't try to walk around the airports in heels. Have some nice sneakers or comfy walking shoes. Because especially if you end up at a big airport like a Chicago or a JFK or a Frankfurt or something, you're going to walk a ways between terminals. And be comfortable. Have a sweater or a light jacket that, if it's colder at one airport versus another, or it's warmer, just make yourself as comfortable as possible and kind of encourage them to have everything organized in their bag and ready to go, whether it's a list of their hotel confirmations or, have it on their phone. There's so many apps, and I hear from so many advisors, there's so many more new apps and software and those kind of things where they can kind of curate all the different pieces that they put together to their client in one app that they can just open up on their phone and say, oh, these are my hotel reservation numbers and here's my flight confirmation number. Going the little extra step for your client and helping them be prepared and organized with all their documentation. And of course, number one, documentation. If they're traveling internationally, send them a reminder the night before their trip. Don't forget your passport.
Please don't.
I hear so many horror stories about they get to the airport and realize, they forgot to put it in the bag the night before. So, that little extra step of saying bon voyage and don't forget your passport, they'll appreciate you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And one thing that you touched on, on the ground really stuck out to me. You could run into traffic locally, when you're touring to, just be prepared for that. Because it does come up a lot, where, traffic is sometimes unpredictable. Most of the time is unpredictable, I would say. And this is one area where guided travel can really help, because travelers know someone is helping them navigate through that process, maybe heavy traffic or something like that.
Yeah, that's where we really step in. If you're booking them into our group travel, they're always going to have a tour manager or a guide that's with them the whole time. So if there's a traffic problem, they're communicating with the bus driver and calling ahead, rebooking times and those kind of things. So most of the time we'll know about traffic problems and delays and having to reschedule, but we're taking care of that. So the client's not really going to know, unless it's a serious thing of okay, we had to move it back 2 hours, so we're going to go get lunch. But because it's just presented as there was a problem and we've already solved it, they have a better experience and they're taken care of. If we just went to them and was okay, we're going to be delayed 2 hours, and don't present them, with a solution, it's not great. So that's where group travel can be really, really nice, to have a tour guide or tour manager or something that's with them for the whole trip, that's, scouting out the next day ahead. Like, okay, we're going to have some weather in the afternoon. So, the outdoor sites, let's flip it around and see those in the morning and things like that. And they're flexible. And as long as your clients are going in with the mindset of being flexible, overall, they're going to have a great experience. And the guided travel removes a lot of uncertainty, again, because of that. They're basically taking care of the whole time. They don't have to worry about figuring out the solutions for your problem, which is why it can be a great option for your clients. And, travelers really appreciate having clear instructions and support. So if a guide or tour manager is coming to them and saying, hey, we have this problem, here's my proposed solution, we're going to get it taken care of, you're not going to miss sightseeing every day, and here's what we're going to do to achieve that. We're going to switch and do the outdoor sightseeing in the morning, and then we'll go stop here for lunch. Everybody will have about 2 hours to wander this cute little city and have lunch and shop, and then we'll flip-flop and do what we were going to do in the morning and the afternoon, because that's indoors. So because it's raining, that's not going to be a big deal. Giving them clear instructions and support makes travel, again, it just reduces that level of anxiety, makes it so much less stressful, and less mental stress is going to allow your travelers to enjoy the experience a lot more.
Of course. And like you said, every tour that you book with ETS is fully guided. So that's one thing that, as a travel advisor, you could check that off your, your list, is knowing that they will have a guide when they book with us. So thanks for going over, a lot of that. Let's now go into, a different kind of stress. This one I know impacts a lot of people. I have, my personal takes on it, but one of everybody's biggest fears is lost luggage. You pack so much stuff for this trip, so much vital stuff for this trip that you need, maybe even to survive, like medications and stuff. And, that could be the worst fear. And it feels like almost every traveler worries about arriving without their suitcase, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more stressful than not having your stuff, right? You like your shampoo, you like your favorite hairbrush, you like your clothes, you just got off a 12-hour flight, you want to take a shower and change your clothes, so lost luggage really stinks. Number one thing to do is pack some small toiletries that you're allowed to take with you in your carry-on bag. So you have them in the plane cabin with you, and pack at least one change of clothes and maybe a couple extra pairs of underwear and that kind of stuff. So in a case of where if your luggage is lost for a day or two, at least you can change your clothes and get a shower, because there's nothing more miserable than just feeling gross after you've been on a plane, for 12 hours.
Yep. Always pack what you need to survive in that carry-on. At least, like you said, change of clothes. That's huge. Medication, stuff that you can, or that you will need in a case where your, God forbid, your luggage, your checked bag does get lost. It's always smart. So thanks for giving everybody those tips there. On the subject of packing and luggage, while we're talking about it, I think overpacking can also create a lot of problem for travelers. I'm guilty of this. I'll be going somewhere for a few days and I'll pack for 2 weeks, because you never know what outfit's going to look good with what you're feeling in the specific time that, maybe you're going to dinner and you're, going through all these different, outfits and stuff you want to wear. So I get overpacking personally, but it can create a lot of problems for travelers, wouldn't you say? Yeah,
it's the opposite end of the spectrum from what we've been talking about. But like overpacking, and you get to the airport, the airlines don't have much grace these days. If your bag's overweight, they're probably going to go ahead and charge you. So that's an extra expense. The other thing too, if you've overpacked your bag, most people want to buy stuff, even if it's just a few things to remember their trip. If your bag was close to the weight limit, but maybe wasn't overweight, well, by the time you buy a couple things and you throw them in your bag, you're now going to be overweight on the way home. Or you buy way too much stuff and now you're checking a second bag. If you can leave a quarter of your bag empty, usually you're going to come in underweight and have space for souvenirs, including in the weight, and travelers often bring far more than they're actually going to use. For instance, with our group tours and stuff, it's pretty rare that you have a reason to dress up. So you don't need a special outfit to go out to dinner and those kind of things. Just comfy, casual clothes. Blue jeans can be worn more than one time throughout the trip unless you spill something on them. And even then, you can get those little disposable kind of clothes wipes and things like that. You can rinse out clothes and stuff in the sink. You need a lot less than you think, in pairing things like a couple pairs of comfortable blue jeans, some different t-shirts or, undershirts and those kind of things. And then maybe a couple sweaters. Nobody is going to care on a group trip if you wear the same sweater twice during the trip, and say you're going during like a low season time and it's cold. If you're going to be covered up with the same jacket every day anyways, what's it matter? So, don't pack 2 outfits for every day. Nobody cares if you're a fashionista. You don't need to bring extra like fancy high heels to dress up at dinner or dress shoes. You can go downstairs in your sneakers, especially if you're having dinner in the hotel restaurant. And the other thing too is like with cruises, I know on cruises, they let you bring as much luggage as you want. And so if people cruise a lot and then they do a trip to an international destination, they're used to taking like 2 suitcases. I can bring half my house with me. It's no problem. And while yes, the cruise ship doesn't care, you can bring as much luggage on board usually as you want. The airlines, maybe you don't care because you can afford the second bag fee and it's no big deal. But another thing to consider if you are doing a group trip is there's only so much space under the bus. Oh, yeah. So, that luggage might be riding in your lap because they ran out of space under the bus because everybody brought, 2 bags. It's just, you don't need that much stuff when you travel. Bring your essentials, the things you can't live without. Most hotels anymore have hair dryers. So that's usually not something you have to worry about. Just bring your diehard electronics, your medications, comfortable clothes to wear, and just leaving it at that. And you don't need 5 pairs of shoes. Nobody's going to care about, your awesome Nikes, and, it could rain and then your awesome Nikes get messed up. Just comfortable shoes that you don't care if you're out walking in the dirt, at archaeological sites all day, that kind of stuff. No, nobody cares about your shoes. Nobody's going to look at your shoes while you're out, especially on a group tour.
Very good. Very good. And sometimes less is more when it comes to packing. I'd say most of the time less is more. That's probably a lesson that also applies beyond travel too. The lighter you pack, the easier it is to maneuver in different situations and stuff like that, the lighter and more prepared you are, the smoother the experience tends to be in many different realms, not even just travel. You have to pick up and, get out of Dodge in a quick situation, pack light, what you need. So it's, good lesson there. So next what we're going to talk about is something that comes up quite a bit, actually. Jet lag, which everybody experiences that. Most people experience that. Exhaustion and overloaded itineraries. So another, a common issue that I just mentioned is exhaustion. People spend months looking forward to a trip and then they try to do everything and end up completely worn out. Do you see that happen a lot?
Oh, definitely. And especially as we age, as I get older, I used to never have jet lag, and now if I don't sleep on a plane, I've sometimes had where it took me 2 days to feel like a normal human being again after I arrived in my destination. And one of the ways that helps is, staying hydrated. That's the number one mistake I think people make, not drinking enough water, especially on the plane. That recircled air, it gets very, very dry and it'll dry you out without you realizing it. So you need to drink way more water than you need. And if you can get, even a couple hours of sleep on the plane, keep yourself hydrated, you're going to feel a lot better and it's going to be faster for you to adjust. And after that first good night's sleep, arriving at your destination, really, really focus on hydration that next day. People don't realize they don't drink enough water. Like the vast majority of people, they're tired and they're jet lagged and they just need to drink some more water. If you're not a huge person that likes just drinking water, getting an electrolyte, pouches or something that you can dump in your water bottle, those help a lot to get you rehydrated, especially after a flight. And, just don't, again, I'll stress on that first day, like give yourself some grace. Don't super pack it, especially if it's like a family trip or individual travel, and you're trying to use public transportation and that kind of stuff, and you've never been to this place before, just give yourself time, give yourself grace. The nice thing with group tours is you've got the bus that's going to pick you up. It's going to drive you around to the sites. So like you can be a zombie person when you get off the plane, and the guide's going to make sure you get on the bus and, find you if you start wandering too much during the little bit of touring, and make sure you get back to the hotel and to sleep that first night. But if you're working on a vacation plan for a family or an individual, like just schedule enough downtime that first day, so they can get acclimated, have plenty of time to navigate, especially if they're using like public transportation, like a subway or a train or something like that. Just don't take it easy on them the first day for sure. And if they're like, no, I got this, I can do it, be like, just trust me. Tell your clients, just trust me. Take it easy that first day, get yourself rehydrated, and the rest of the trip will go great.
I'm big on hydration. In life in general. Make sure you drink your water out here. Another, lesson that you'll, learn here. Hopefully you stay hydrated in everything you do. And another thing that I was thinking about when you mentioned hydration, a lot of these destinations that we go to, like, the Holy Land, Jordan, sometimes, depending on when you go, these places can be really hot. And if you're already dehydrated coming into like the next day where you have to do, a full day of touring and it's hot out, it's dry, it doesn't go well. So make sure that you're hydrated ahead of time at least, and continue, though the guides will tell you, make sure, you're hydrated throughout the entire day. And if at home listening to this, make sure you're drinking your water always. So regarding like the sites, I know you talked about, people think they need to, experience every little thing and try to cram so much. And I think social media has probably made this worse too. People feel like they need to see every landmark, every, thing there, and photograph every moment as opposed to, looking with your own eyes. Would you say that's something you would?
Yeah, I mean, that's a personal pet peeve. I'm always so sad when I'm visiting an amazing site and it's beautiful and everybody's just like waiting for their turn to take a picture there, and they're not really experiencing it. So, sometimes, put down the camera and tell yourself for at least 5-10 minutes, I'm going to actually walk around and just like take it in. Like, please do this. I'll see people that queue in line for their turn to take, the Instagram perfect shot, where 1,000 people earlier in the day already took the same picture. Like, come on, guys, we can do better. Like, enjoy it, be there in the moment. Travel shouldn't be about checking boxes of like, okay, I got all the picture perfect, spots in here. I updated them to the gram,
Awesome. Thanks for walking us through that. Next part I want to talk about is, another thing that, I think if you get out in front of this, you'll be in good shape, is expectations versus reality. So another travel headache people don't always talk about is expectations, setting the bar too high, too low, and just, expectations always is something that, sometimes travelers build up and experience so much that any small inconveniences feel disappointing because those high expectations there. So would you say, what are your thoughts on, setting the expectations and then, comparing them to what is, ultimately reality in a lot of cases?
Yeah. Again, stress to your clients and the people traveling with you. Flexibility. Stuff happens. Every trip has something happen. There's always an unexpected moment. You can't plan for every possible variable or potential calamity. There's going to be the potential for delays. The weather could have said it was going to be perfect when you checked it on Sunday, and now you're on Friday and there's storms. Stuff just happens. And another thing, people see these videos and pictures online, and they've been carefully curated, so this awesome destination looks like there's hardly anybody there, and they're the only person. They got this cool picture of them in front of, say, the pyramids of Giza in Egypt, and it's just them, and you think there's nobody there, and then your client goes, and it's like, there's like 1,000 tourists all wandering all over the place. Like, where did they find this awesome location where they could get a picture with just the pyramids in the background? Because that's not reality. And so much of social media, and especially when it comes to travel blogs and that kind of stuff that people see, is very carefully curated. If your client is traveling in the summer, it doesn't matter where they're going. It's going to be busy. There's going to be locals out. The kids are out of school. People, even just locally within the country, on vacations, as well as the tourists that flood different destinations. So, crowds are just a part of travel today. If you go to the Louvre and you're like, oh, I want to see the Mona Lisa, you might wait 30 minutes because there's 200 people all swarmed around waiting to get close enough to take their picture of the Mona Lisa. It's, to me, one of the most overrated experiences. That's why I like to use it. I was in the back of the room. I kind of got a grainy picture of it. I can say I saw it.
Yep.
It wasn't super overwhelming to me. And yeah, it was absolute insanity just seeing this whole crowd of people like slowly pushing forward and then trying to work their way back so they could get a picture with it. So, set those expectations. Crowds are a reality. And flexibility. The overall experience is going to matter more than those isolated inconveniences. So try to stress that to them. If they come back and they're like, well, my trip was ruined because they lost my bag and I didn't have my bag for a day. And so everything I saw and did, is now negated. You've really got to help them stress the positive of like, wasn't it fun when we went and did this? And then we had that great dinner together at, the little cafe, and everybody was laughing and that kind of stuff. Like, sometimes as humans, like, we will dwell on just this one thing that went wrong and that we couldn't fix. And it was so frustrating. And it's like, you'll focus on it for the rest of the trip and you miss out on so many great moments. So again, helping to try to get them in a positive mindset before they travel, prepare them for the realities of travel, that stuff might happen, and you just got to let it go because every problem has a solution.
Yeah, throwing a fit is never a good look. I mean, and especially in public, and that's probably especially true in international travel where things, work different culturally. I think of, my relatives in Italy, especially the southern part of the country, everybody is a little bit just more relaxed over there. You could be, panicking, trying to get to where you need to go, and everybody is just a little bit.
Dinners at 7 really means dinners at 8, and kind of just show up and hang out. Like,
exactly.
Don't stress. Yeah, that's a perfect thing to bring up. Different cultures operate at different rhythms. There's the popular siesta. So many countries and stuff that were colonized by Spain, and even in Spain to today, there'll be like 2 to 4 hours during the day in some cities where like everything's just shut down. They're on their siesta. They're having their long lunch. They're having their time of rest. Working around that, if you're used to eating at 12, but the local siesta doesn't start till 2, it starts at 2, you better make sure you eat early because the restaurant's going to shut down. Everybody's going to go on siesta. So travelers just have to approach their experiences with curiosity rather than frustration. Like, be open to a little different lifestyle and a little bit more calmness and go with the flow and things like that. Some of the most memorable travel moments really do come from those unexpected situations. And then flexibility often leads to better stories later. So, I went to Paris one time with my family, and we thought about going to the Louvre the next day, and we're like, we're not going to look at anything and see if it's even open. Yeah. So we get to the Louvre, and it's like, oh, this is the one day a week it's not open. So what we did is, we started walking back along the Seine and decided we'd just go see the Musée d'Orsay that day. Like, just be flexible. Don't be so beholden to, I have to do X on Monday and X on Tuesday. Like, it can be a funny story that I'm sharing with you now of like, we just were so go with the flow that we didn't bother to look to see if the museum was open before we traveled all the way over there. But we made the best of it and went somewhere else instead. Also had an amazing croque madame that day at a random cafe because it was like, oh, we're hungry. So, there's a cafe. And we just tried it. And it was really, really good. So, Americans are really bad at expecting the places they go internationally to be just like where they came from.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's not. There's going to be different foods. There's going to be places where, they speak enough English to communicate, but if you're getting real specific, they may not understand and you may have to have a longer conversation or pull out your phone to help translate or something like that. Like, you're a visitor. Think about it like going into your neighbor's home and they ask you to take off their shoes. You don't do that in your house, but you do it respectfully. You're visiting your neighbor, right? So try to think about that when you're traveling and, respect the local culture, be flexible, and just go with the flow. Like nothing is world ending, You're not in Kansas anymore, and that's the fun part. You're trying to see new things. You're trying to experience new things. So, just go with it.
Yep. And we love the great state of Kansas, but what you said is very true. Very true there. So enjoy the unknown, like you said. So we definitely unpacked a lot today. If you had to summarize the biggest key to avoiding travel headaches, I know we went through a lot, but if you had to summarize, what would those be there?
Yeah, preparation. The more you prepare your client, the more you kind of walk them through possible scenarios and things that could happen. You make sure they know what to do if something goes wrong, whether it be, to call the airlines to get their flights rebooked if, there's flight delays and those kind of things, or, they get somewhere in their transfer from the airport per se, they can't find it. Make sure they have the number to call. Like the more you can prepare them. So if this happens, here's all the information, all the stuff you need. It's going to allow them to feel more comfortable, less anxious, and be a little more go with the flow because they're like, okay, this problem happens. I already know how to solve it. Organized travelers are going to adapt more easily when problems arise. And realistic expectations improves the experience. Tell them up front, nothing's ever perfect. I have planned and I have worked and I have curated this for you. Me, the agent speaking to the client, but stuff happens and be flexible and know that, you're traveling to Europe in August. So stuff's going to be closed sometimes. And, there's going to be a lot of people there because everybody in Europe goes on vacation the same month. It's very, it's like here in the U.S., everybody for the most part does their vacations in, July to early August because that's when their kids are out of school. Experienced travel providers, help travelers navigate challenges. And that's a big thing with ETS. We have our local staff. They'll have the guide or the tour manager that's with them the whole time. And, we have a 24/7 emergency line that they can call if anything's going wrong that gets them connected to the right people within our organization to solve problems and those kind of things. So that's a nice benefit of group travel. If you've curated something for them, they always have you and you can step up and help them find solutions to their problems and things like that. Because travelers should focus on enjoying the journey as much as possible and not controlling every detail. Like, it's not the end of the world if you showed up 5 minutes late, usually for your dinner reservation. You shouldn't have your schedule so tight that like 5 to 10 minutes, it took you extra time to travel throws off your whole day. Like, just really, really stress that to them, to take it easy, wander, enjoy, and don't plan every second.
Yep. I love that. Yeah. And, all those points that you just hit on, that probably applies whether somebody's taking a pilgrimage, a European tour, a cruise, or really any kind of travel. It could be a family road trip, and you're on a set schedule. Like it just applies in so many different ways, all those items that you just outlined there for sure.
Yeah, the goal is just for meaningful, memorable experiences. Good preparation creates space for travelers to actually enjoy the trip instead of stressing about the details.
Awesome. And thanks again, Bethany, for joining us today and educating our listeners. I know today really wasn't a faith-based episode, but it was really good to speak some of these things that are reality or can be reality and help people prepare for them there. So yep, again, thanks for joining us today. Do you have any last minute encouragement to any of the travel advisors or?
Yeah, if you have high anxiety clients, encourage them not to let the fear of problems potentially happening stop them from traveling. It's easy to let the process distract you from the destination. You start thinking about all the logistics and I got to remember to do this and where are our tickets or, where's our confirmation, just show up. That's the beautiful thing about our group tours and that kind of stuff is that's the tour manager or tour guide's problem. They tell you, hey, we're going to get on the bus at 9:00 in the morning, be there. And then you just go enjoy your day with them and they handle all of the details. And then they're like, okay, we're going to be back at the hotel about 5 p.m. And you guys, dinner is going to be at 7 and, just clear instructions and you don't have to think. That's the beautiful thing about going on a curated group tour. So if you have really anxious clients, that might be better than handing them a binder of like, here's everything I've planned for you. Have fun. That might be a little much for them. And most travel issues are manageable. There are solutions to flight delays. Problems can be solved. Preparation and flexibility make a huge, huge difference. The number one being flexible. And, it remains one of the most rewarding experiences. So, yeah, don't let fear or anxiety stop your clients from going. Just teach them to let go, be flexible. Stuff's going to happen, but it can be fixed. And then you can go on and enjoy the rest of your trip and drink plenty of water.
Yep, definitely drink that water and go with the flow, I would say. Be prepared. Stuff can happen. So again, thanks for joining me today and going through all of the these items to help our travel advisors help prepare their clients to have a great trip. These are all items that may be in the back of our mind when we're talking about planning something life-changing for people. So we appreciate you going over all of these here. And of course, to all of our listeners, we appreciate you very much. Thank you all for listening to the ETS Travel Podcast. Definitely, we appreciate hearing your feedback. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely please be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and join us next time as we continue to explore meaningful travel experiences around the world. In the meantime, God bless, and you have a blessed day.